Hi, I'm Natalie Jill, fat loss expert turned high performance coach. When odds are stacked against us, how do we shift and create everything from nothing? How do we level up when we aren't feeling it yet or we've had a big setback? On this podcast, I'll be talking to some of the most inspiring and courageous men and women on this planet who at their worst learned how to achieve success greater than they ever dreamed possible, leveling up and creating everything from nothing. Exactly 100 days after Katie launched her company, Inner Glow Circle, her brother died from an accidental drug overdose. 6 months later, she cut ties with her business partner and fiancé, all while fighting a battle with Lyme disease, which she was losing. Things were spinning out of control in Katie's life, but she knew deep down that giving up was not in her cards. She cried, punched pillows, made deals with God. She worked hard to save her business, but in the end, it was her business that saved her. Join in today and learn exactly how Katie DePaola leveled up and created everything from nothing. Today on Leveling Up, I'm here with Katie DePaola, who I'm excited to talk with today about for a number of reasons. She founded Inner Glow Circle, which we're going to get into that. But what's interesting is she's got two stories within a story of one, how she left a job that was safe and started something on her own and making her passion her own. But then also when she finally leaped into her passion, she had some unimaginable setbacks. And we're going to get into that today and what it took for her to power through and thrive through it all. So Katie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
So take us back. You were typical person, corporate, PR. What were you? What was happening? You finished college. You were doing PR. Who were you then?
Yeah. So I think the real story goes back a bit farther than me starting IGC, my brother passing away, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and the Lyme disease or any of it. But what happened for me was that I went to Vanderbilt. I graduated. I moved to New York, and I thought that was like the dream, right? Like I thought that was like in the bag. But after a few jobs in PR and marketing and sales, I just was having this overarching experience of, is this all there is? And now I look back and when I work with students or clients, I'm like, you know, that's kind of like existential anxiety, right? Like wondering and being anxious about, is there more? Is there more? So I went searching, and like many people, one day I found myself crying in the office bathroom. I think I like bolted the door shut before I called my dad, but I called my dad and I said, is this it? Is this all that like life is going to be? And I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I knew he'd had to have some guidance for me. But the reality was I wasn't fulfilled. I didn't feel like my life had a point. I wasn't happy. And like, I was really, really not happy. There were parts of my life that were working, but overall I felt so just disconnected from who I thought I was going to end up being. Okay. And that's a weird experience for me.
Yeah. And you were fortunately having this on the younger side, I would imagine, because I'm just doing numbers backwards thinking, I'm assuming you were in your 20s when this was happening?
Yeah, I was 22, 23, yeah.
22. Yeah. So you're lucky almost that you had it then, because some people listening, they're their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s having it right now. So It's the same conversation, but you had it early. You had it early. So what happened from there? What made you be able to take a leap versus where other people get stuck there?
Yeah. So I moved home to DC. I worked for my family business for a little while. I started a graduate program in nutrition, which was like my best guess at the time, right? I loved health, and I had a lot of challenges with my own health, which we'll talk about. But that seemed like it made sense. And then the other thing that I did, and this was the thing that really started to shift things, was that I started an organic spray tanning business. And the way it worked was my spray tanning business, which I named Whole Glow. It did really well. And I realized I could make $60 in 20 minutes. And I'm like 24 at this point, and I'm loving it, right? I'm just like, I've got naked girls coming in and out of the studio. And I'm like, okay, I'm onto something here, right? But what happened was Whole Glow kind of had an agenda of its own. So it started to take us in this different direction, way beyond the outer glow, like the actual spray tanning. And I noticed something really, really interesting, Natalie. I noticed that people were telling me so much stuff. So people joke, and I know you've heard this, but people say like hairstylists have all the secrets in the world. And some people have started branding themselves as hairists. And you've heard this. But I think like spray tan artists have even more secrets because you're really getting up and getting in there. So
and they're vulnerable right there. They're literally naked in your face.
They're so vulnerable. And I know you're so passionate about vulnerability, and so I am, but so am I. But this is like physical vulnerability, right? So I'm like getting up there. This is airbrush spray tanning. We're doing this by hand. And you know, so I'm asking like, oh, you're going to an event. And it just goes to the next level fast. We're talking about breakups, divorce, kids, not being able to have kids, like post baby body. They're just opening up. And I started to realize people were telling me things like I'm having to like move them out the door because I've got my next appointment, and sometimes drying their eyes like, oh my God, you can't cry. You just got a spray tan.
Yeah.
But it kind of happened on its own. So I figured there must be some natural gift that I had if people would open up to me that quickly, that much. And I set out to explore what that was. And honestly, I started to get a little concerned because I didn't have a background in psychology. I wasn't a therapist. I wasn't a counselor. I knew about coaching, but I wasn't a coach at the time. And people were asking me for all of this advice and guidance. And they were like leaving with a spray tan, but also this huge conversation.
Yeah.
And how I started coaching was I felt like I needed to get some real training.
Okay. So a couple clarifying questions first with this. So, because this is also common. So when I talk to people that become successful entrepreneurs, they also started sort of like all over the place. So they were doing this and then this and then this. And just like you said, I was doing PR and then I was going to do nutrition and then I'm doing spray tan. So were you having those outside voices like, Katie, get a grip? Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to focus on? And how were you combating that conversation?
I really was just trying to figure out what lit me up the most and what made me actually feel happy. Like really feel alive. And it kind of felt like I was just knocking things off my list. Like, that's not going to work, or that's not going to work, or, you know, and you go from job to job in the same industry. And at some point you're like, wait, it's not the job or it's not the boss. Like, this is just not the right field for me.
Now, did you have a supportive family and friends around this? Or like, because that's another thing that comes up for people is that they'll have somebody that they look up to, parents, family, whoever, spouse, telling them like, make up your mind or get focused on something.
It's a great question. And I see that with our students too. In general, my family was really supportive, but they have a very traditional business. My grandfather started a fence company. They built it into this large remodeling company. I was like doing spray tans. My parents were like, oh, that's a nice little thing you're doing on the side. You know, like, you made $60 today. Yay.
Yeah.
So I knew when I eventually went through coach training, I did not tell my parents or anyone I was starting. And I didn't tell them until I started making money from it.
Got it.
In my family, if you were financially successful and you had your shit together in that way, then you had something, right? And it's not like they were, you know, awful about it. I just wanted to prove to them, first, I always wanted to be self-funded.
Got it. Okay. So then you get this idea, you decide you want to be a coach, which now today, the buzzword coach, it's like everyone is a coach. So at the time, I'm assuming this wasn't the buzzword yet, or was it? Or were you thinking you were on something new, or did you have a story around everybody becomes a coach?
No. So this was 2012. So I know this market, like the years just go by so fast, so much happens. But in 2012, there were still not as many people online as there are now by any means. And I never felt like our students today will say, you know, it's just such a competitive market. And I'm like, do you know how many lawyers are out there? Do you know how many doctors are out there? Come on, you've got to do your work, right? But I didn't feel it competition in that sense. I felt a sense of urgency. Like, that's why I ended up dropping out of grad school for nutrition because I was like, you want me to wait 2 years and like do all these chemistry equations before I can help people? No. And so I knew that I could help people now if I became a coach. So it was something I had seen, you know, to me, coaching was like, there were coaches at retreat centers. Yeah. Out in Arizona, you know, like that was my extent of knowing who coaches were. So, I had worked with a health coach myself, but besides that.
So so you knew you wanted to be coaching some sort in this. What did you do next? What was and were you more into the vision of like, this is just going to happen, or what was your process for figuring that out?
I was referred to a coach training program, like a certification program. It was a year-long program. I went through it. My coaching practice took off very soon, like while I was in the program. And I was making really great money to the point where I had to hire a friend to take over the spray tanning business.
Wow. Katie, I have a question about that because a lot of people, just like with the whole theme of there's lots of coaches out there, there's a lot of programs too. Like how did you know, how did you pick the right program? How did you know, like, I'm going to do this and get this out of it? Because there's a lot of the other story too, where people get overwhelmed by which program or they join an expensive program and they're not learning how to actually apply that to themselves. So how did you go through that process of figuring that out?
Well, based on my career, how my career path has shifted, this is an interesting question to be asking. But back then when I was choosing a coach training program, I was just choosing between a health program and then a more robust program. I didn't know there were a lot of options. I didn't do a lot of research. Someone referred me to this program that was a year-long program. It seemed less niche and more broad. And I thought that's going to help me make the biggest impact. So
yeah, I like that. I do think it's interesting because you said you didn't know there was a lot of choices out there. You just kind of went off a referral. I do think that people get out of things what they believe they will too.
Of course.
So it's like if you choose a program or something and you're committed to getting something out of it, I believe that you do, whatever you choose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I had a huge advantage in that I knew about business. I knew about marketing. I knew about sales. And I knew about being an entrepreneur because I grew up surrounded by entrepreneurs. Everyone in my family somehow works for the family business.
Sure.
So we were talking business at the dinner table. We weren't talking about politics. I mean, every now and then, but we were talking about business. So I knew enough and I started to really, I was the highest performer in my class and I really couldn't understand because when you know something, it's so natural to you. I couldn't understand why everyone else was struggling.
Yeah.
So then later in my career, when we built our coach training program, I used that. I used the experience that I saw my colleagues having, and I made sure that we had ways to support our students around sales and marketing because that's the number one gap. You can be the best coach in the world. If nobody knows about you, forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you start this coaching business, you're top of your class, you're thriving, but then your world seems to start crumbling down. Tell us what happens.
Yeah, so it's 2015 and I've been coaching for a little over 2 years and I decided if I'm going to make real money and have a real impact, I need to scale the business, right? Because I'm an entrepreneur and the pressure's on for my family. So at Whole Glow, like I said, the outer glow was the spray tanning and we had started to call the inner glow the coaching. And there were two really different things, but people loved it. They loved the way that I branded it and they got it. So I knew I was onto something. And also to market my coaching, I had started hosting these monthly women's circles. And, the people that would come to the events, they would bring their friends and they really looked up to me and they really respected me. And they were like, Katie, I want to talk to you after the event. I had that whole experience of sort of being the guru. And I think at this point I was 24. But then we go to scale. I decide that we're going to scale the business. We're going to open another business. This is the business plan. It was all sketched out. And then things totally change.
What changed?
Well, I bring on a few of my previous clients to work with me and be trainers in the program. And we open Inner Glow Circle. And I'm so excited to grow this thing. And I know this is my life and I know this is my path. And an investor is interested and there's getting some traction. But then, and stick with me here because this is where it gets really sad for a moment. One morning the phone rings and I get a call that my youngest brother died. And it was the worst call of my life, obviously. The worst day of my life. Bo was 20. And his death turned my world upside down in a way that you can never prepare for.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're just launching this business. You lose your brother. And I imagine your focus just completely shifts.
My focus shifts, Natalie, and I start questioning everything. I mean, when something like that happens, and I know that you've gone through a lot of, different challenges in your life, but when something like that happens, you start to ask a lot of just why? And I'd already been through that. And I thought I had found an answer. I thought I had found an answer in coaching and knowing what my purpose was. But then this was a whole nother level. And, my brother died from an overdose. It was accidental, but for a long time I was really mad at him.
Yeah.
I was really pissed, so I'm faced with this major life challenge. And I
would imagine you're coaching women into stepping into their power and all this stuff. So then now there's this opposite thing happening in your family. So where you're coaching almost into that, and then your brother dies of that. The opposite.
Totally. Yeah. I felt like not like a hypocrite, but I sort of felt, who am I to be teaching? Who am I to be talking about this stuff? I had gotten over the fact that I was so young, right? Because people are like, you're a life coach at 25 and you want me to hire you? And I'm like, yes. And I'm like, okay, here's my credit card. But, because I knew what I was doing when it came to business, but this was a whole nother level. I didn't know if I was even emotionally equipped to be fully for my clients.
So when something's happening like that, what did you do and what would you do now, knowing I always find speaking into what we're walking through tends to be really empowering for other people versus speaking around it. Did you do that, or did you have another approach?
Yeah, I definitely talked about it. I talked about it as much as I was capable of. But I had a few other things going on. I had been diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease a year prior. So now I was battling Lyme and losing my brother. I think for me, I always say that my business saved me, and I'm happy to talk more about that. But the other thing that really saved me was that I had early on surrounded myself with a lot of really incredible women, and women who were like down with my vision and saw their vision in my vision. And we were able to work really well together. And so at the times, whether it was weeks, and then at one point it was a few months that I had to step away from the business, I knew I was leaving it in good hands. So I think support is everything.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people do try to lone wolf and they don't have that. And that's one of those dangers. So how did you manage the business while that was happening though? Because here you're in growing stages. You could have easily pulled back and people would have understood. How did you, because there's a lot of people listening right now too, going through something similar, like maybe they've started or they want to, but they've got something big in their life happening or that just happened.
Right. So there's a few things. I mean, so there's always like the just day by day approach. I had to learn how to take my life day by day, and I was never that kind of person. And I had to learn how to slow down a little bit. I really had to learn how to delegate.
Okay.
Delegating became something like I'm definitely a bit of a control freak and a recovering perfectionist. And I had to learn how to pass things off. And I had to learn how to pass things off before I really felt ready, before I even really knew what the business needed. So that was ended up being a really big blessing, because one of the things I see new women entrepreneurs experiencing is they're so afraid of someone else getting involved with their vision and taking it in the wrong direction. But I didn't really have a choice, because I didn't know if the business was going to, if the business was going to still have me. I remember one day I ended up taking 2 months off of work at one point. And I remember I called my business partner, Liv, who had been one of my early clients. And I said, Liv, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back. If I don't come back, are you going to be able to run the company without me? And she said, yes, but I don't want to. Please come back. So for me, it was just a lot of simultaneously working on myself, finding the right doctors, working through my depression and the experience of losing my brother, and then also continuing to grow in and believe in the mission, and making sure I wasn't the only one holding the vision for the mission of the company, because some days I wasn't strong enough. Okay.
Got it. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it was, what was your vision for the company, first of all? Because I think that's something that people miss. They're very busy on the structure of what they want to create, but they're not really thinking about the vision, what the overall vision is. And when you have a very clear vision, it's very easy to enroll others in your vision. And then that becomes the wind beneath the wings to grow everything, I think. So I'm curious what your vision was. Because a lot of people, I ask them, what is your vision about their business? And they don't even know. What is your vision?
So our vision is that the future belongs to the female entrepreneur.
What does that mean?
It means that we want more women in being entrepreneurs. We want women across the world, everywhere, ones who it would be easier for and ones who it seems nearly impossible for, to know that they can be an entrepreneur. Because being an entrepreneur sets you free in so many ways. I mean, we can do this whole, our mission statement is that we help people find their purpose, live it, and get paid. And that's a mission statement that's sort of, light and cute and accessible to most people. But a lot of the students that we attract have been through some really crazy shit,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And like, I remember, it was a couple years ago, but a woman that ended up becoming really involved in doing coach training and then doing our graduate program. And I talked to her on the phone, and she's like deciding whether or not to sign up. And back then I was still like doing sales calls all the time. And she's like, I just had a stillborn. Like, I'm trying to decide if this is a good time. And I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, no. And then on the other hand, I'm like, yes. And I said to her, like, look, I told her some of the stuff I'd been through. And I said, for me, my business saved my life. For me, my business gave me a place to show up on the days that I did not think I could show up. For me, it was like I call it the glow in the dark, or the light at the end of the tunnel. But like, I had to create it. No one was sitting there giving me the answer or giving me hope. I had to become my own hope. And so she, I guess something hit her because she ended up signing up and becoming a big leader inside of our company. But we hear that a lot. And there's so many people, I know in your field too, and in your audience, like people who have chronic illness and who have, gotten injuries, or they've gone through different experiences where the big dream that they thought they saw for their life now seems really far away.
Yeah. I like what you said though about, the business saved you. And I want to dive more into that, because I think that purpose and passion saves everybody, no matter what somebody's walking through, whether they're walking through a loss or their own health journey, or aging, which is something I speak a lot into, or a personal rock bottom. Purpose is what we live for. Like, having a purpose changes everything.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's what really has carried you through, that you've had this purpose in you.
I think so. And I think that's why it's so important that we find it. Because if I hadn't locked in my purpose before Bo died and before my Lyme got really bad, I don't think it would have looked the same way.
Yeah.
And so, I joke that I built my business from my bathtub in the doctor's offices, because I did. I'd like have an IV in my arm and be like, texting my business partner, or like reviewing photos from a photo shoot. And the nurses would be like, my God, that's you? I'm like, yeah. Cause I'm like, to them, I'm like a sick person, but I had this whole other life where on the days that I could get there, I was fucking showing up.
Yeah.
And so my book, which is going to come out early next year, it's called At Least You Look Good, because people would always say to me, I tell them, my brother died, this happened. I have chronic Lyme disease. It's getting to my brain. My memory's gone. I've lost half the feeling in my body. And they're like, but you look really good. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
So, but this is really so interesting, because there's so many people, like, you could be talking to somebody with the exact same things as you and be completely enrolled in their victim story. Like, we could all get enrolled in why somebody would not work, would not create, would not step into a vision, would not run a business, would not empower others, because they have Lyme disease, because they have just lost their brother, because they have these things working against them. And we would all understand and be enrolled in that. What do you think it is about you that keeps you not there, not a victim?
Okay. Well, to answer that question, I have to tell you a short story about when I did get really victim.
Okay.
So, I mean, in general, I think I'm a really positive person, but what happened for me was I kept working through it all. The Lyme was getting worse, and I started to really believe like my stories. I started to really believe that I didn't have much time yet. I started to believe I was going to have to live life in a wheelchair, that the paralysis would come back. And I was like, can I speak from a wheel? Like, I was envisioning these things, right? What am I going to wear if I'm speaking from a wheelchair? Like, I was manifesting in that direction.
Yeah. Which I think a lot of people would be doing.
Totally. It's natural. I mean, the brain has such a hard time getting out of what's happening.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, I used to get so mad when people would say, just work on your mindset. I'm like, I've been through so much trauma. I've been diagnosed with PTSD.
Yeah.
You want me to just work on my mindset?
Yeah.
But I think what I ended up teaching myself to do was mindset work. So for me, what happened was one day, it was about 2 years after losing Bo. I'm sitting in my car, my parents' driveway. I had just decided to take 2 months off work. This was the first time I ever took a real break. I didn't take time off when my brother died. I took like a few days off.
Yep.
But I was drowning. Like, I had a full on, like, the weights on my shoulders.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to do this. Panic attack. made my dad take me to the hospital, drive from Maryland to DC to come
Yeah.
get me. And so for me, that's how I knew how bad things were, because work was the thing that was saving my life. Work was the thing that was keeping me alive.
Okay.
If there was any part of me that was okay taking time off work, there was reason to worry, right?
Right.
But I had also just gotten onto this 9-month wait list with this doctor, the one doctor that I knew of who could cure Lyme. And this is why I'm having a meltdown in my car, because I get onto this wait list. It's a 9-month wait list. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't have 9 months. I don't have 9 months to be in this much pain. I don't have 9 months to feel this depressed. And I really didn't. Like, when you're going through stuff, you could get a stressful email from a client and it feels like death, right? Because it's not about that. It's the fact that you're not fully emotionally strong enough. And I knew I was strong enough to be doing what I was supposed to be doing in my life. So I'm in the car and I have this breakthrough moment that changes everything. And I guess I was like talking to God or my brother, or, my higher self. And I got really honest and I asked out loud, and I know you'll understand this because of the mindset work that you do, but I asked myself, like, what part of me is accepting this? What part of me is accepting this level of pain, this level of grief, this level of sadness year after year? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, Katie, you lost some things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Katie, your body's not what it was before. But what part of you is actually accepting this?
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Yeah. You know what I'm hearing too, because you mentioned earlier, and this is a theme with so many people, so many guests that I've interviewed, and you may not even realize this yet because you're still on the younger side of a lot of people I've interviewed. But like, so you mentioned earlier, you have got a lot of control and perfection that you've battled, that you've dealt with. And what I'm hearing with all the stuff that you've been through and that you continue to walk through is you're being forced to surrender and realize that you can still walk the walk and create and live from a place of passion and purpose despite whatever else is going on. And so that's a heavy theme that I'm hearing for you. And I'm just wondering if you've noticed that, because I do see this with a lot of guests that until they got to that place of like, all right, it's happening, but what am I going to do in spite of this or anyways?
Yeah, totally. Sometimes it doesn't happen until we start trying so hard. I mean, for me, I've really needed to learn how to surrender. And in that moment in the car, the thing that I heard was, you haven't decided. You haven't actually decided. And I'm thinking, what? And I kept hearing this back, like not externally, but like in my mind, you haven't decided, Katie. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it like I
just got chills, Katie. You're talking my language right now. Deciding always comes first.
Like a movie, I see these like this movie reel of all the things I said I was going to do in my life, all the things I've seen, because I'm really intuitive, but all the things that I've seen since I was a child. And I knew those things weren't accessible unless I became a different me. And I literally said out loud that day in that car, I'm not done. I said, I'm not done with this life. I'm not finished. In fact, I'm just getting started. I'm going to keep building my company. I'm going to finish writing my book. I'm going to have a beautiful marriage and a family. I'm going to keep traveling. And I decided that just because Bo died didn't mean that I had to.
Yeah. So good.
And like, once I decided that, the miracle started to pour in.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. That's amazing. So, okay. So now how do you keep yourself focused despite setbacks? Because I'm assuming you've learned all these lessons, you had all these setbacks and you're thriving now. I'm assuming setbacks still come up. So how do you approach those now when they come up?
Yeah, I mean, I have gotten really great at eliminating distractions, and I really focus on prioritizing. I prioritize what's the most important, what needs to happen next. I have a lot of positive self-talk. I fully understand that I went through a lot, and that sometimes my trauma still speaks. Like my boyfriend makes fun of me because I'll get a cold and I act like I'm dying, but it's because I have trauma around being sick. And so I just have to remind myself, Katie, this is a cold. And if something happens at work, I mean, the early years of business were so chaotic for us because my life was chaotic, but because business is chaotic. And now things are really stable and we're really growing and it's really consistent and we have a phenomenal team. And It's almost like, I think of it this way, Natalie, like when you've gone through something, you almost need a larger percent of time that you're out of it than you were in it to start to feel like yourself again.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. Gosh. Okay. So I have a couple just general questions that I ask everyone, and I'm curious your take on this. How do you stay, because you started out sort of with the idea of like, figuring it out and different interests, like the spray tan and the nutrition and different things, PR. How do you stay focused on staying in your vision, like with what you want to create versus getting distracted with other things? That's my first question. And then I've got more on that.
Staying in your vision without creating other things.
Yeah, because I know that personality that when you PR 1 minute nutrition, all over, that tendency is probably high. How do you stay in that vision?
Yeah. I mean, I think you got to give yourself a little bit of time in trying to figure it out. But once you feel like you've landed on something, you got to test that thing. We call it being in your glow zone. So I say that you have to find the thing that lights you up the most. And once you find the thing that lights you up the most, like you have to have tunnel vision. And for sometimes with our students or our team, I'm like, get off social media, like for a week or whatever you have to do, shut it down. You have to get focused. You have to zoom in. You have to be so clear and you have to be so decided that what you say you want is actually what you want.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that if you have that tenacity in your vision, it becomes easier to say no to things that don't fit in your vision. Yeah,
that makes sense. I like that. That's critical because I think I do that too. I will share when I'm sidetracked with my millions of ideas, which I have millions of ideas. I always say to my husband, I'll say, I have an idea. I'll be like, really? You have an idea? Is I go back to my vision. Like, what was my vision? What did I decide? And does it align with that first?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I love that. Okay. Do you have a morning routine that you stick to? Because I know a lot of people successful early on, they're like, I have a regimented morning routine. I do not. I have like my ideal morning routine, but it feels very fake because it's not my norm. It's like this is my ideal when I could do it 4 or 5 days a week. Yeah. But I'm wondering if you do.
I think I've heard you talk about this before. I'm the same way. I have no morning routine. I actually was laughing because I think it's kind of embarrassing, but now I just own it. Like my routine is I wake up whenever I need to wake up to be able to get the max amount of stuff that I need to get done that day done, including self-care and beauty and working out and all that shit. I make all of that a priority. And then I don't, usually my morning routine is I lay there, I don't want to wake up. Then I realize I actually love my life and I have a lot of really fucking great things to wake up for. I get out of bed and I try to eat something because to me that's the most motivating thing first thing.
Okay, mine too. That's mine too. I'll be real with that. Okay, good. So see, are you all listening? You don't have to make yourself feel bad because you don't have a morning routine. You don't have to. You don't have to. But you do have to be, but I do love that you shared, and I have an episode on the commonalities between every episode I've done. And I did that at 100 episodes because there are commonalities to everybody, and every single person says that they made a decision, which you just said. They had a vision, which you have. So interesting that you brought those up. And I think those are more important than your morning routine, having those two things, deciding and having a vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
If somebody is listening right now, and this is something I ask everybody that's on my show, Katie, if someone's listening right now and they're in their own personal rock bottom, and I know you can relate to a lot of these variations. So maybe it is that they did just lose somebody. Maybe they're dealing with their own health scare, or maybe they've lost their business. It's a financial thing. But they're in this place of self-beat up, like you mentioned you were for a little while, the victim mode. What would you tell them if you were to give them 3 things that they could do right now to start shifting and creating everything from nothing? What would you tell them?
I love your tagline, by the way, every time you say it. I think first it's a mindset thing. You can't let the bad shit that happens to you take you out of the game. So whatever you want, I say you have to glow after it. You have to go after it, right?
Go after it. I love it.
And recognize those things can hold you back, but they don't have to hold you back.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to say to somebody, I'll say it to myself, oh, let's create something amazing out of your brother dying. That sounds off. But what I can do is use the stories to tell the truth of my life so that other women can see oh, wait, I'm not alone. Losing a child or losing a sibling or losing a parent doesn't have to stop me in my tracks. So I think that you have to try to figure out how to take the things that have happened to you and make them part of your mission.
Yeah.
Make them part of your vision. We say create the thing you wish existed.
Yeah.
And I would say create the thing that wish you existed when you were still stuck in the dark.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. I love that. So good. So good. All right. Tell us, I know people are liking your story. And what I love about you is you're not jaded on like a million years of life experience, but you've had some real life experience early on, which is cool, because I interview a lot of people that, you know, they've got a lot of years on you. So they've got the big dramatic up and down failures. But what I like is that you truly created from a space of not knowing and having stuff happening to you.
Yeah.
So you didn't have and lose, but you built from a lot, from a lot happening.
Thanks.
So tell us more about your business and where people can find you.
Yeah. So
your book coming out.
Yeah. So my business is Inner Glow Circle, like I've said 100 times. So write it down, guys. You can find us on innerglowcircle.com or on Instagram at Inner Glow Circle. We work with women entrepreneurs who want to find their purpose, live it, and get paid. And some of them are entrepreneurs, you know, farther along in the game, need some help, want to rebrand, want to bring in a new, stream of revenue, something like that. And then some of them are what I call entrepreneurs, like people who are just curious. So, you know, we work with women who want to bring their dreams to life. But I would say that like beyond that, the depth and the soul of our business is that we really do attract a woman who is very, very real. And we keep it real. And we're very honest in the most loving way. But like, I think because of me and my story and how I started the business, like, you know, excuses are just excuses. They're just reasons not to do. Let's go find some reasons to do. Yeah. Right. So, you know, I mean, you do at the same time talking to people in your business and speaking. It's like pain is a hard thing. Pain is a hard thing, but it doesn't have to just be a hard thing. Yeah. You actually get to create what you want. And I always joke about beauty stuff because I'm like, I don't know if you've ever done microblading. I've got my eyebrows microbladed. I'm like, you can't tell me everything's supposed to feel good, right? Like that is something that is so painful, but I'm so happy with what, like the result. And I know it's silly, but we use a lot of analogies in coaching, and sometimes things are painful, but what's on the other side is like so fucking beautiful that it actually is worth it. And you get to decide, I want to have a life that makes everything I went through actually be worth it.
Love it. Awesome. And now your book, what is it? When does it hit stores, or when does it come out?
It comes out early next year, 2020. And it's called At Least You Look Good. Yeah. And it's a very vulnerable, it's a self-help memoir, and it's a very vulnerable share of all of the experiences that I've gone through and how I've built my company along the way. And we start with the beauty, and we talk about boys, and then we talk about business. And I share a lot about how to, you know, glow through what you go through. That's
love it.
What I talk about.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you.
Thanks for leveling up with us today. Please share this episode if you found it helpful so others can join in. And don't forget to hit that subscribe so you don't miss out on future shows. And if you would leave me a 5-star review, I appreciate those so much. I read all of them, and it's how I know that I'm giving you information that you find valuable. And come interact with me over on Instagram at Natalie Jill Fit. I read all the direct messages and comments over there. Make it a great day, creating everything from nothing.